I died choking on my own blood. The taste of betrayal as sharp as the shards of glass from the windshield that had exploded into my face. My husband's hands weren't on the wheel. They were around my throat. Even as the car flipped end over end down that rain-slicked embankment off the Pacific Coast Highway. And in that final, flickering moment, as the ocean roared closer, I heard him whisper, "This is for the company, Iris. You were always too damn stubborn."
Now.
Gasping awake in my old apartment bed, the alarm clock blinking 7 a.m. on a crisp September morning in 2022, I realized the impossible. I'd been given a second chance. And hell if I wasn't going to make them all pay. It hit me like a freight train, the date. The familiar ache in my lower back from that lumpy mattress I'd tossed out years ago. The faint scent of my ex's cheap cologne still lingering on the pillow. 3 years. I'd clawed my way back from that accident in my first life, only to watch everything crumble again under the weight of their lies. But this time, I remembered every knife in my back, every whispered deal in boardrooms and bedrooms that led to my ruin. My name is Iris Hale, and in my old body, 28 again, I was no longer the wide-eyed entrepreneur who trusted her husband, her best friend, her own damn family. I was a ghost with a grudge, reborn to dismantle the empire they'd built on my corpse. The first call came before I'd even swung my legs over the side of the bed. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with Mom in bold letters. In my previous life, that call had been the spark, the one where she'd sobbed about Dad's mounting medical bills. How I needed to step up for the family business we'd all poured our souls into. Halevine Arts, the boutique winery in Napa Valley that Dad had started with his bare hands after immigrating from Ireland in the 80s. I'd inherited the CEO spot at 25, turning it from a hobby farm into a 7-figure operation with my late nights tweaking blends and schmoozing investors in San Francisco.
But Mom?
She'd always seen me as the golden goose, not the daughter. Iris. Honey. Her voice crackled through the speaker now. Syrupy sweet with that southern lilt she'd never shaken from her Georgia roots. We need to talk about the expansion. Your father's not getting any younger. And those loans.
Well,
they're piling up like autumn leaves. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. Memories flooding back. How she'd forgotten to mention the shady loans from my husband, Ethan. The ones he'd funneled through shell companies to siphon off profits. In the end, when the feds came knocking, it was my signature on the falsified docs, forged by his hand, but pinned on me because I'd been too busy loving him to notice. Prison had been hell, but the real torture was the whispers. How could she? Stealing from her own family. And Ethan? He played the grieving widower after the crash, selling the vineyard to a corporate raider for pennies, pocketing the rest while Mom toasted his support at the funeral. I know, Mom, I said, my voice steady as steel, the words tasting like revenge already. Let's meet at the office.
Today.
I've got some ideas that'll blow your mind. By noon, I was striding into the Hale Vineyards headquarters in St. Helena, the air thick with the scent of oak barrels and fresh-pressed Cabernet. The building was modest, a converted barn with exposed beams and walls lined in tasting room awards, but it was ours. Or it had been. Employees nodded as I passed, their faces a blur of half-remembered names. Sarah from accounting, who'd leaked my personal finances to Ethan for a bonus. Mike the sommelier, who'd testified against me in court, swearing I'd pressured him to fake inventory logs. I forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach my eyes, and headed straight for the corner office that would soon be mine again. Mom was already there, perched on the edge of Dad's old leather chair like a queen on a throne, her perfectly coiffed bob not a hair out of place. At 58, she looked every bit the Napa socialite, pearl earrings, silk blouse, the faint lines around her mouth from years of tight-lipped judgments. "Iris, darling, you look rested." "That's good. We need you sharp." She air-kissed my cheeks, her perfume cloying as ever, Chanel No. 5. The same one she'd worn to my wedding. I sat across from her, pulling out a folder I'd printed from my laptop on the drive over. In my first life, I'd ignored the red flags, the discrepancies in the books, Ethan's late nights networking with my best friend, Lila.
But now,
I'd spent my prison time memorizing every detail, every transaction. "Sharp it is."
Mom.
"Look at this." I slid the folder across the desk, pages of highlighted bank statements, emails I'd somehow recovered from the cloud backups I'd forgotten about until my rebirth. Her eyes widened fractionally as she flipped through them, the color draining from her Botox-smooth cheeks. "Where did you get this?" she hissed, snapping the folder shut. "Ethan said those were handled." "Private." "Ethan says a lot of things," I replied, leaning back with a casual shrug that belied the fire in my gut. "Like how he loved me while he was betting Lila and emptying our accounts." "But you knew, didn't you?" "The loans weren't for Dad's treatments. They were for his gambling debts in Vegas." "And you signed off on the cover-up because—"
What?
"Family first." The words hung in the air like smoke from a wildfire. And for the first time, I saw the crack in her facade, a flicker of guilt, quickly smothered by indignation. "How dare you accuse me? After everything I've sacrificed." She stood, her chair scraping back like a gunshot. But I was faster, rising to meet her, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut deeper than any shout. "Sacrifice? You let them frame me."
Mom.
Watched as they drove me off that cliff, literally. "And for what? To keep your precious vineyard afloat on lies." She froze, her hand fluttering to her throat, but I pressed on, the hook sinking deeper. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm telling you, pull the trigger on those audits now, or I walk. And when I do, the IRS gets a full dossier. Your choice." She deflated then, sinking back into the chair, her eyes darting to the window where the vineyard rows stretched like green soldiers under the relentless California sun. "Iris, I didn't know it would go that far." "Ethan promised." "Promises are for suckers." I cut her off, turning for the door. "Fix it. Or watch it burn." As I left, the weight of that first strike settled in my chest, not triumph,
Not yet.
but a cold satisfaction. One down. But Mom was just the appetizer. The main course was waiting in San Francisco. Ethan Blackwood, my husband-to-be, the golden boy of Silicon Valley venture capital who'd marry me in Napa next spring, only to orchestrate my downfall 2 years later. Traffic on I-80 was a nightmare. As always, trucks belching diesel. Tech bros and Teslas weaving like they owned the road. I cranked the AC in my beat-up Honda Civic, the one I'd trade for a sleek Audi in my first life, right before Ethan convinced me to co-sign his startup loans. By the time I hit the city, the fog was rolling in off the bay, turning the skyline into a ghostly silhouette. Ethan's office was in the heart of Soma, a gleaming glass tower that screamed new money. His firm, Blackwood Ventures, funded half the AI hype trains buzzing through the valley. I parked in the garage, smoothed my blouse, and headed up to the 22nd floor, the elevator ride giving me time to rehearse. Not the screaming match I'd fantasized about in prison, but something sharper, exposure, slow and surgical. The receptionist, a perky 20-something with an undercut and nose ring, recognized me immediately. MS.
Hale.
Mr. Blackwood's expecting you. Go right in. Expecting me? Of course. In this timeline, we were still in the honeymoon phase, whirlwind romance after I'd pitched Hale Vineyards at a TechWine crossover event 6 months ago. He'd swept in with his dimpled smile and Harvard MBA charm, whispering about synergies and six-figure deals over candlelit dinners at Gary Danko.
Now.
As I pushed open the frosted glass door etched with EB, he was on his feet, arms open wide, that boyish grin plastered on like it was permanent. Iris.
God.
I've missed you. He pulled me into a hug, his cologne some overpriced Tom Ford, wrapping around me like a noose. I let him hold me for a beat, inhaling the familiarity that now tasted like poison, then pulled back with a laugh that sounded genuine even to me. Missed you too,
Babe.
but I come bearing gifts. I dropped a USB drive onto his desk, next to the mock-ups for his latest pitch deck. Financials from the vineyard. Mom's on board with the merger talks, your merger talks. His eyes lit up, that predatory gleam I now recognized as the shark scenting blood.
Nos cheat?
That's huge.
Seat.
Sit, tell me everything. As he poured a scotch from the decanter, Lagavulin. Neat. Because he thought it made him look worldly, I watched him, cataloging the tells, the way his left knee bounced when he was scheming, the quick glance at his phone for Lila's texts. In my first life, this merger had been his endgame. Fold Hale into Blackwood, leverage my assets for his IPO, then accidentally bankrupt us both to cover his embezzlement. The crash? Insurance payout to seal the deal. But today, the drive held not just projections, it held the seeds of his ruin, doctored just enough to trigger red flags when his accountants ran the numbers. We talked for an hour, his hand on my knee, spinning visions of our future, penthouse in Pacific Heights, kids with his jawline, and my brains. I played along, batting lashes and dropping hints about expanding the family portfolio, but inside, I was carving his epitaph. When I left, kissing him goodbye in the lobby with promises of dinner Friday, I slipped into a coffee shop across the street and fired off an anonymous tip to the SEC. Blackwood Ventures, check the Hale merger docs. Offshore shells. Sweetheart. It was petty. Maybe. But petty was my new love language. That night, back in my apartment overlooking the bay, rent-controlled heaven in a city devouring itself, I poured a glass of our 18 Reserve, the one that had won double gold at the Unified. Sipping it slow, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, wedding shots with Ethan beaming, Lila as maid of honor in that god-awful teal dress, Mom toasting with champagne flutes. Lila, my best friend since Stanford, the one who'd accidentally forwarded Ethan's sex to the tabloids when the scandal broke, painting me as the jealous wife. She'd gotten a book deal out of it, Betrayed by Vines, a Napa scandal, while I rotted in a cell. Tomorrow, I drive down to Palo Alto, where she was consulting for some edtech startup. Payback started with brunch. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of Bay Area weather that made you question every life choice. I texted Lila on the way south. Coffee? Catch up? Miss our girl talks. Her reply was instant. Emojis exploding. Hearts. Coffee cups. The works. We met at a spot on University Avenue. One of those Instagram-perfect cafes with avocado toast and oat milk lattes, where venture hopefuls nursed hangovers and pitch anxiety. She was already there, waving from a corner table, her blonde waves cascading like she'd stepped off a Pinterest board. At 29, Lila Voss was the picture of curated success, Lululemon athleisure. Engagement ring from her tech bro fiancé glinting under the Edison bulbs. Iris. Oh my God. You look amazing. Vineyard life agreeing with you? She air hugged me. All teeth and perfume, something floral and fleeting, like her loyalty. We ordered her a matcha, me black coffee. No frills, and dove into the gossip, her latest startup drama. My adorable engagement stories. But as she prattled on about scaling user acquisition, I steered us to the heart of it. Speaking of scaling, you hear about that merger with Blackwood? Ethan's pushing hard. Thinks it's our ticket to the big leagues. Her fork paused midair, spearing a chunk of toast, and there it was, the micro-twitch in her jaw. The one I'd learned to spot in therapy sessions after the crash. Merger? With Hale? That's
Bold.
You sure you trust him with family legacy stuff? Innocent, but laced with that old envy. In college, it had been harmless, her jealousy over my easy path to CEO, me sharing my fears about Dad's illness. But post-grad, when she crashed from job to job while I built the brand, it festered. By the time Ethan entered the picture, she was his confidant, feeding him intel on my weaknesses, like my aversion to confrontation, which he'd exploited to gaslight me into signing those docs. Trust is earned, right? I said, sipping my coffee with a smile that didn't waver. But hey, if it tanks, at least we've got each other. Like old times. I slid my phone across the table, open to a group chat screenshot from last week, fabricated, but pixel perfect, Ethan and her. Late-night texts about meeting up while I was in Napa. Her eyes widened, color blooming in her cheeks. Where did you get that? Doesn't matter. What matters is how it looks when it hits the Chronicle. Or better yet, your fiancé's inbox. I leaned in, voice low, the cafe's hum fading to white noise. You slept with my husband, Lila. In my first sorry, in that timeline where I let it slide. But this time, walk away from him. From the vineyard. From all of it. Or I hit send. She stammered. Excuses tumbling out. It was a mistake. He came on to me. You're paranoid, but I saw the fear. Raw and real. The girl who'd once been my rock was crumbling. And damn if it didn't feel like justice. By the time I left, she'd agreed. No more contact with Ethan. A quiet resignation from her consulting gig that overlapped with Hale suppliers. Small victories. But they stacked like kindling. As I merged onto 101 North, the sun breaking through the clouds, I felt the first real thrill of this second life. Not just survival, but supremacy. But revenge is a hungry beast. And mine was just warming up. The real feast? Exposing the secret they'd buried deepest. The one that started it all. Dad's illness. Pulling into the Napa driveway that evening, the vineyard house loomed like a sentinel, Spanish-style stucco with terracotta tiles. Wisteria climbing the arches like veins. Dad was on the porch, rocking in his old Adirondack chair, a tumbler of bourbon in hand despite the doctor's orders. At 62, he looked frielier than I remembered from this era, hollow cheeks, the liver spots on his hands more pronounced under the porch light. Cancer, they'd said. Pancreatic, stage 3. But in my first life, I'd learned the truth too late. It wasn't just the booze and stress, it was the tainted barrels. The industrial solvent Ethan had accidentally mixed into a shipment to cut costs. Knowing Dad taste tested every batch personally. Slow poison. Covered up as bad luck. All to force me into desperation and those fateful loans. Iris. Lass, he called, his Irish brogue thickening with the drink. Eyes crinkling in that way that always melted me. Heard you gave your ma a proper earful today.
Good on ya.
I climbed the steps, dropping into the chair beside him, the wicker creaking under me. The valley air was cool, laced with damp earth and fermenting grapes. A scent that screamed home even as it twisted the knife. Someone had to.
Dad.
She's been playing fast and loose with the books for years. He chuckled, low and rumbling, swirling his glass. But family's family. We built this from dirt and dreams. Your granda planted the first vines back in '72. You know, can't let a few weeds choke it out. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching fireflies dance over the rows. But my mind raced ahead. In this loop, Dad lived another 18 months before the cancer took him. Long enough to sign over power of attorney to Mom, and by extension, Ethan. But if I could prove the poisoning now, before symptoms worsened, it changed everything.
No merger.
No frame job.
No crass.
Just cold, hard accountability. That night, after Dad shuffled off to bed, I raided the cellar, rows of oak barrels stacked like ancient monoliths, the air heavy with must and memory. Armed with a flashlight and sample vials from the lab kit I'd ordered en route, I pried open the suspect lot, batch 47, the one Ethan had inspected last month. The liquid sloshed dark and viscous as I siphoned it, my hands steady despite the ghosts whispering in my ear. Back upstairs, I sealed the samples and drafted an email to an independent tox lab in Sacramento. Anonymous sender. Rush job. Test for contaminants. Discreet. Cost me $2,000 from my savings. But money was the least of my weapons now. Sleep came fitful. Dreams replaying the crash in high def, tires screeching. Ethan's grip tightening. Lila's voice on speakerphone laughing. She suspects nothing. Keep her drinking the Kool-Aid. I woke sweating. The clock glowing 3:17 a.m. and padded to the kitchen for water. That's when my phone lit up, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk.
Now. Lila.
Panic clawed at me, but I shoved it down. Of course she'd crack. Threats only buy time. I replied. Embarcadero. Pier 39.
Dawn.
Come alone. Dawn broke bloody over the bay. The pier a ghost town of fog-shrouded tourists and scavenging gulls. Lila waited by the carousel, bundled in a trench coat that did nothing to hide her red-rimmed eyes. Makeup couldn't mask the puffiness. She'd been crying. Or fighting. Or both. Iris.
Please.
Delete those texts. It was one time. A stupid drunken. Save it, I snapped. The wind whipping my hair like Medusa's snakes. One time, you forwarded my emails to him. Lila. Helped him forge the signatures. And when the car went over, you were the one who planted the suicide note in my purse. Her face crumpled. Confirmation enough. But she doubled down, voice rising shrill over the waves. You're crazy. That crash was an accident. You were driving erratic. Popping pills for stress. Everyone knows. Pills. The oxymom had slipped me after Dad's diagnosis, laced just enough to cloud my judgment. The web tightened with every thread I pulled. Everyone knows what you told them, I said, stepping closer. the railing cold against my back. But here's the new truth. Walk away. Or I go public. Not just the affair, the whole damn conspiracy. Book deal? Try mugshot. She lunged then, not with fists but desperation, grabbing my arm. You think you can threaten me? Ethan's got dirt on you too, your temper, the fights. He'll bury you again. Her nails dug in, a flash of the old fire. But I twisted free, shoving her back, not hard, but enough to send her stumbling against the rail. A gull squawked overhead, mocking us both. Let him try. This time, I'm the one with the shovel. I left her there, sobbing into the fog, and drove straight to the vineyard lab. The samples tested positive within hours, trace benzene derivatives. Industrial grade. Enough to mimic carcinogens over time. Armed with the report, I confronted Mom again that afternoon, slamming it on her desk like a guillotine blade. This ends now. Audit everything. Fire the suppliers Ethan vetted. And Dad goes to a real oncologist, UCSF.
Stut.
She blanched, but nodded. The fight gone. For him. Iris. Always for him. Liar. But useful. As I left, my phone buzzed. Ethan. Dinner tonight? Big news on the merger. I smiled, typing back. Can't wait. Wear that tie I like. Dinner was at the slanted door in the Mission. All sleek wood and lantern light. The hum of deal makers sealing fates over dim sum. Ethan was animated, waving chopsticks as he pitched the revised terms, 60-40 split. His favor, with incentives for quick close. I nodded along,
Pouring sake.
letting him talk himself into the trap. Midway through duck confit, I dropped the bomb. By the way, had the barrels tested. Turns out batch 47's contaminated. Ethan's inspection missed it, big time. His fork froze. Sauce dripping forgotten. Contaminated? How bad? Bad enough to poison Dad.
Slowly.
Like, cancer bad. I watched him, the telltale bounce in his knee starting up. But hey, accidents happen. Right? The implication hung. And for the first time, fear flickered in those blue eyes. Real fear. Not the performative kind he'd fed me post-crash. Iris, what are you saying? You think I think you're a climber. Ethan. And I'm done being your ladder. I slid the talks report across the table, right next to the dessert menu. Fix it. Pull your funding back off the merger. Or this goes to the DA. Intentional endangerment? Manslaughter? He sputtered, charm cracking like cheap porcelain, but I was already signaling the waiter. Check.
Please. Oh. And Ethan?
We're done. Outside. The Mission streets pulsed with life. Tacos from street vendors. Murals screaming defiance. But I felt hollow. The high of confrontation fading into ache. 3 strikes. Mom neutered. Lila leashed. Ethan reeling. But the board wasn't clear yet. There was the corporate raider, Victor Kane, the vulture who'd swooped in after my death to buy hail for scraps, flipping it into a mass-market sludge factory. In this life, he was already circling, whispering to Mom about distressed assets. Tomorrow, I'd fly to LA, his turf,
His game.
but I'd play dirty. Jet lag hit like a hangover on the red-eye to LAX, the city sprawling below like a concrete fever dream. Victor Kane's office was in Century City, a fortress of marble and glass where Hollywood met hedge funds. He was old money, 70 if a day, Silver fox with a Rolex that screamed, "I own you." And he'd built Kane acquisitions on hostile takeovers, gutting companies like Fish. In my first life, he'd been Ethan's silent partner, the one who'd greenlit the frame job for a cut of the Vineyards IP.
Now,
As his assistant ushered me into the penthouse suite, the view of the Hollywood sign mocking me from afar, I steeled for the chess match. "Iris Hale," he boomed, rising from a desk the size of a small car, hand extended like a trap. The wine whisperer herself. "Your mother's told me all about you, firebrand, they say." His grip was iron, eyes appraising like I was a vintage bottle. We settled into leather armchairs, a tray of chilled view between us. And he dove in, flattery first, then the hook. "Heard about your little merger hiccup with Blackwood. Smart girl. Pulling back. But Napa's tough. Vines don't pay bills. How about we chat partnership? I could make Hale a household name." Household name. Code for strip-mined and soulless. I sipped the champagne, letting the bubbles mask my bile. "Appreciate the offer, Victor. But family's off limits. Especially after what happened to Dad." I let that dangle, watching him shift subtle.
but there.
He knew about the contamination. Hell, his shell company had supplied the tainted sealant. Tragic.
That.
But business is business. Speaking of, he pulled a folder, sliding it over, preliminary offer, insultingly low, with clauses that screamed buyout trap. This was his play, scare me with Ethan's fallout, swoop in as savior. In my past life, I'd signed in desperation.
Now?
I flipped it open, feigning interest, then accidentally knocked my glass, the champagne soaking the pages.
Oops.
Clumsy me. As he dabbed at the mess with a napkin, I leaned in. "You know, Victor, I had those barrels tested. Funny thing, same chemical signature as your industrial parks in Oxnard." Coincidence. The room chilled, his jovial mask slipping to reveal the predator beneath. "Careful." Yes.
Hale.
Accusations like that could ruin a girl. Ruin. I laughed. Sharp and unladylike. Been there. Died there. Try me. I stood, leaving the sodden folder on his desk like a curse. "Tell Mom the deal's off." Permanently. His security tailed me to the elevator. Overkill. But it fueled the fire. On the flight back, I leaked the talks data to a agribusiness watchdog blog. Anonymous but airtight. By morning, Kane stock dipped 3%. Whispers of environmental lapses rippling through the trades. Napa welcomed me with golden autumn light. The harvest in full swing, workers in the fields, laughter carrying on the breeze. Dad was stronger already. The UCSF docs confirming early intervention could buy years. Mom hovered, chastened, handling the audits without a peep. Lila had ghosted, her LinkedIn on sabbatical. Ethan? Radio silence, his firm under SEC scrutiny. It felt like winning until the twist hit. Midnight call from an unknown. "Iris? It's Victor. You think this ends with leaks? I own half the valley. Back off. Or your father's next accident won't be so accidental."
Threats.
The old playbook. But this time, I had the full deck. I hung up, poured a nightcap, and started digging deeper. Kane's real secret, the one even Ethan didn't know, ties to organized labor shakedowns, mobbed-up unions squeezing Napa growers for protection. In my first life, it had surfaced post-crash.
Too late to save me. Now?
It was my Excalibur. The wedding was still on in this timeline.
Anyway.
6 months from my rebirth. And I'd let the invitations go out. The venue booked at a rival estate down valley. All to lure them into the open. Ethan thought it was reconciliation. A fresh start after I'd cooled off from the merger mess. Mom cooed about tradition. Dad just wanted to see his girl happy. Lila? She'd slither back with apologies and a bridesmaid dress, desperate to salvage her spot. And Victor Kane? He'd RSVP'd with a +1. His congratulations note laced with veiled barbs. It was perfect, one event. All players. My endgame board set for checkmate. Prep was a blur of tastings and fittings, but I used it to fortify.
Jair Dapi, ex-Fed.
Discreet. $5,000 retainer to tail Kane's operations. Photos rolled in. Payoffs to union reps and dive bars off Highway 29. Doctored manifests from his Oxnard plants mirroring the hail contamination. I funneled it to a DOJ contact I'd made in prison outreach. Irony's sweetest vintage. Meanwhile, Ethan ramped up the charm offensive. Flowers daily. Weekends in Tahoe. Whispers of forever that curdled in my ears. Sex was the hardest to fake, his touch familiar yet repulsive. Each night a performance of moans and afterglow cuddles while I plotted his fall. "You're different lately," he murmured one dawn, tracing my spine. Stronger. I like it. If only he knew. Lila's return was scripted pathos, tearful lunch at Buchan. Vows of sisterhood, a forged email chain proving her innocence. I forgave publicly, hugged it out for the staff. But privately, I fed her crumbs, tips on Ethan's stress, planting doubts about his fidelity. She bit, texting me concerns that I screenshotted for leverage. Mom, ever the orchestrator, handled the guest list, oblivious to my shadow war. 200. Iris, the who's who of Napa. I nodded, smiling, while wiring funds to a hacker collective in Eastern Europe, dark web pros who'd crack Kane servers for the price of a used Beamer. Harvest wrapped with a bang, record yields.
No tanti lads.
The 23 vintage projected to crush. Dad raised a glass at the crew party, his color returning, voice booming. To Iris, the heart of it all. Cheers echoed. But my eyes scanned the crowd for threats, union stickers on a truck in the lot. A burner phone buzzing in my pocket with a hacker's drop, Kane's emails, goldmine of bribes and blackmail. One in particular, to Ethan, dated pre-crash in my old life. Handle the wife, or the vineyard's mine. No loose ends.
Proof.
Ironclad. The eve of the wedding. I drove the coast again, not to die, but to think. Pulled over at the Overlook, the same spot where it had ended before. Waves pounding like Judgment Day. Wind tore at my hair, salt stinging my eyes, and for a moment, grief cracked through the armor. I'd loved them, fiercely, foolishly. Ethan, with his dreams of legacy. Lila, my mirror in chaos. Mom, the steel spine I'd inherited. Even Kane, a monster, represented the cutthroat world I'd chosen. But love didn't absolve betrayal. It fueled the burn. I revved the engine, heading back with resolve. Tomorrow, the altar would be my Colosseum. Ceremony at 4 p.m. Sun dipping low over the vines. String quartet sawing Pachelbel as guests filed in, 200 strong. From venture vultures to winery wonks. I walked the aisle alone. Dad too weak for the arm. Veil whispering secrets. Ethan waited at the arch. Tux sharp. Smile megawatt. But sweat beaded his brow, SEC heat turning up, Lila's whispers gnawing. Vows exchanged. Rings slipped on like shackles. And then the reception. Long tables groaning under charcuterie and our reserve. Toasts flowing freer than the wine. Mom's speech first, tearjerker about family bonds unbreakable, her eyes on me with newfound wariness. I clinked glasses. Polite, but my pulse thrummed. Lila next. Maid of honor drone about soul sisters, her voice wobbling as she avoided my gaze. Guests laughed. Applauded. I smiled. But inside, the countdown ticked. Ethan's turn. Charming anecdotes. Promises of building empires together, his hand clammy on mine. Then Victor Kane rose. Uninvited to speak. Glass raised high. To the bride, may your vintage age like your ambitions. Bold. Unyielding. And to Mr. Blackwood, fortune favors the ruthless. Laughter rippled, but his eyes locked on mine. Challenge accepted. Dinner cleared. Band struck up, Fleetwood Mac. Ironic as hell, and the dance floor filled. I twirled with Dad first, his steps careful. Whisper in my ear. Proud of you.
Lass.
But something tells me this ain't the end.
Weissman.
Ethan cut in, pulling me close. Breath hot. You okay? Look like you're plotting world domination. Close enough. As we swayed, my phone vibrated in my clutch. Hacker's final payload. Kane's full ledger. Time-stamped bribes. Hale's name in red. I excused myself to the bridal suite, heart hammering, and fired it off to the DOJ contact. Package attached. Nail the bastard. Back in the fray. The high hit, guests swirling, wine loosening tongues. Lila cornered me by the bar. Eyes wild. Iris. Ethan's cheating again with the intern. I saw texts. Gift-wrapped. I feigned shock. Hugged her tight. We'll handle it. Sisters. Right? Then Ethan. Pulling me aside behind the arbor. Babe. SEC sniffing. Nothing major. But we need to consolidate. Sign this prenup addendum tonight. The same forged doc from before. His pen extended like a serpent's tongue. I took it. Scrawled my name with a flourish. Then accidentally dropped my lighter, flame catching the edge. Paper curling to ash in seconds. Whoops. Guess we'll rewrite it. Panic flashed. But the real fireworks came at 10 p.m., sirens in the distance. Growing louder. Guests murmured. Heads turning as cop cars crested the hill. Lights strobing the vines. Victor Kane bolted first, shoving through the crowd toward his limo. But feds swarmed, DOJ badges gleaming, cuffs snapping like applause. Victor Kane, you're under arrest for racketeering, environmental fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Gasps. Screams. Mom fainted into a chair. Lila retched into the hydrangeas. Ethan lunged for me. Grip bruising. What did you do? Told the truth. I whispered. Wrenching free as agents hauled him to SEC warrants for embezzlement. The prenup ash as alibi's funeral pyre. Chaos reigned. Guests fleeing. Band packing up. Dad, shielding Mom as paramedics swarmed. Lila sobbed on the grass. Exposed. Her book deal dreams dust. And me? I stood amid the wreckage. Veil torn. Dress muddied. A queen in ruins. But alive. Avenged. As dawn crept over the hills, cleanup crews hauled away the evidence, arrest logs, shattered glassware. I sat with Dad on a hay bale, sharing the last bottle of 18. Knew you had fire. Iris.
But this.
This was Inferno. He coughed, but smiled. The UCSF meds, working miracles. Mom approached, humbled, folder in hand. Clean audits. Vineyard deeded fully to me. I'm sorry, she whispered. No takebacks. But forgiveness? Maybe later. The fallout lingered like a bad vintage, tart, unbalanced, impossible to pour out. Trials dominated the headlines for months. Kane's empire crumbled under RICO charges. His Oxnard plant shuttered. Unions exposed as mob fronts. He sang like a canary in plea deals, fingering Ethan as the inside man on the Hale sabotage. Blackwood Ventures folded overnight, investors fleeing like rats from a sinking yacht.
Ethan?
Federal pen in Lompoc. 20 to life for fraud and attempted murder. The crash reclassified. My suicide note debunked by forensics I'd anonymously tipped. Lila got house arrest. Her memoir scrapped amid defamation suits. She sold her Palo Alto condo to pay fines. Vanishing to some ashram in Sedona. Peddling healing crystals to Silicon refugees. Mom retreated to the guest house. Volunteering at the co-op. Her socialite sheen dulled, but not destroyed. We talk sometimes, stilted coffees on the porch. Dissecting the lies without absolution. I thought I was protecting us, she'd say. Eyes on the vines. You were protecting your image, I'd counter. But softer now. The edge blunted by time. Dad rallied. The real treatment nipping the cancer early. By spring, he was pruning Rose himself, whistling Irish reels. His laugh booming again.
Seconde chance.
Iris. Rare as a perfect pour. Hale Vineyards thrived without the vultures. Organic certs rolling in. A collab with a Brooklyn sommelier netting distribution in Whole Foods. I ran it lean, no mergers. Just merit. Staff turnover? 0. After I promoted Sarah to CFO and gave Mike a profit share, loyalty bought with truth. Not threats. Evenings. I'd wander the crushed pad. Feet sticky with juice. The ferment a metaphor for this life. Chaos yielding something richer. But rebirth's price? Isolation. Dates fizzled, guys sensing the walls I'd built. The stories I dodged. Friends? Shallow now. Surfaces only. Trust was a luxury I'd bankrupted. Nights alone. I'd replay the wedding inferno. Not triumph, but catharsis laced with what-ifs. What if I'd seen the signs sooner? Forgiven instead of fought? The twist came quiet. 6 months post-chaos. A letter from Ethan. Prison stationery.
Scrawled in his precise hand.
Iris, you won. Fair play. But you should know, the crash wasn't just business. Lila? She pushed me, said you'd never love me like you did the vines. Jealous.
Yeah.
But real. And your mom. She knew about the poisoning from day one. Offer me a cut to handle it. Family, right? Burn this. Or don't. Ethan. The paper trembled in my grip. Ink blurring under tears I hadn't shed since the rebirth. Another layer peeled, Mom. Not victim, but architect? The betrayal deepened, a chasm swallowing the ground I'd gained. I confronted her that weekend, let her thrust like a blade. She didn't deny, just deflated. I was scared. Iris.
The debts.
Victor had us by the throat. Thought if you were out, it'd save Dad.
Out.
As in gone. The woman who'd birthed me had plotted my end. Rage boiled. But I walked away, no cops.
No headlines.
This was mine. Instead, I rewrote the will. Vineyard to a trust for dad. Mom with a stipend. Contingent on therapy and distance. Heal or fade, I told her. Voice cracking. She left for Georgia. Back to roots. Last I heard, tending her sister's peach farm. Forgiveness? Not yet. Maybe never. But the weight lifted.
In.
Summer 24 brought clarity. A solo trip to Ireland. Dad's ancestral vines in County Cork calling. I walked cliffs like the PCH's wild kin. Wind scouring secrets. And found peace in the soil. Tangible. Unbetrayable. Back home.
Ichair dat so CEO.
A no-nonsense vet from Sonoma with laugh lines and zero tolerance for bullshit. Dates resumed. Casual. Hikes with a brewer from Oakland. Trivia nights with a journalist who asked questions without prying. No rush. This life was mine. Unhurried. The final hook? A package on my doorstep. Autumn leaves swirling. Unmarked. Heavy. Inside. A vintage bottle. R18 Reserve. Label pristine and a note in Lila's script. Forgive me? Or at least taste this with someone who deserves it. I uncorked it that night, pouring 2 glasses on the porch. One for the ghost of what was. One for the woman I'd become. The wine sang bold, layered, a finish of unexpected grace. I drank to the dead me, the betrayed girl who'd burned bright and brief. To the betrayers, lessons etched in regret. And to Iris 2.0, survivor, saboteur,
Sage.
revenge hadn't fixed the fractures, it exposed them, forced the rebuild. But in the quiet of the valley, stars wheeling overhead, I felt whole. Not happy. Exactly, happiness was fleeting. A buzz on the tongue. But free? Damn right. And in America, where second acts are the national pastime, that was victory enough. The vines whispered agreement. Roots steep. Reaching for another season. I raised my glass to them, toasting the cycle, die, rebirth,
Ruin. Rise.
again, and again, until the story ends, not with a bang.
Bu à balanced pour.